Okay, rear derailleur setup. So basically where we left off last time is we have handlebar all set up. We have the crankset, front derailleur, rear derailleur installed. We have the chain installed, we have the cassette installed. This step here is basically going to be routing our cables from the handlebar down along the frame to the rear derailleur, tightening them onto the rear derailleur, and then setting up the rear derailleur so that all of our gears work properly. Now, in the case of this bike, this has external cable routing. That basically means that you're going to see the cables routing in most cases, at least on a road bike. They're going to come in some point along the head tube of the bike. The cables are then going to run down on the underside of the down tube, underneath the bottom bracket, and along the chainstay to the rear derailleur. There are bikes that have internal routing, but they're more complicated, and I don't have one to demonstrate for you. So, the other thing here is there are two cable stops here. That is where the housing comes into a stop, and then only the cable continues along. We have one up here at the head tube where it has a barrel adjuster that allows us to increase or decrease the tension on the cable. Cables will stretch throughout the season, and even when you're setting up, you want a little bit of play so that you can dial up the tension on the cable a little bit tighter as needed. On the rear derailleur, we also have a barrel adjuster as well. So we've got play at both ends, and the front derailleur we do not have one at all. So we've got to be a little bit, more control thing there. But so set up the cables basically from the handlebar. The right hand side is your rear derailleur. So the way that runs is cable has gone through the handlebar and come out underneath the stem coming from the right hand side. We then want to take that cable and we want to come back to the right hand side and down along the right and underneath the down tube. So with all these cables coiled up to keep them out of the way. During setup, we're going to undo that now. And we're going to get this. There you go. And also here undoing is a little metal cap for the cable housing that I'm going to put on. So it has a nice even stop point. And then I'm going to feed the cable into the barrel adjuster. And make sure all my other cables are out of the way. This is the first cable we're installing, so we can subsequently route everything else after it. But because this is internal routing on the handlebars, so I'll show you right here. The internal routing on the handlebars means you have a whole bunch of cables coming out. Two on this side, two on this side. You have a lot of stuff happening right here. So you just always want to make sure that you don't have too much overlapping or crowding. If this cable here instead was in front of the derailleur cable we just routed, it would kind of be pushing it back. And so there's a lot of stuff to consider here. The biggest consideration though you want to make in all of this is that you have enough of its nice soft arc of all the cable housings routing around. That's especially important because the bike will actually, you're going to be turning here, so you want enough play that as you steer side to side, you're not going to have any problems with not having enough cable housings. And then something's going to break when you steer too hard, either intentionally or by accident. And so we have that right there. The next step is, like I said, the cable's going to come down tube and then pass underneath the bottom bracket. In doing that, there's a small little, let's see how well we can see that here. So there's a little guide piece. I'm not sure how well you can see that. Maybe I'll just bring the camera here. And now you can kind of see the guide piece. The cables are going to run through there just so they're not sliding around. And then we're going to continue on back to the rear of the bike. So to do all that on the stand, I'm just going to lift it. Make sure I get the cable running through there. And boom. Back down. So now we're going to continue along the chainstay. We're going to do that. This cable stop here is slotted, so I can easily pop the cable in and out. So I'm going to pull that out so I can easily, or more easily, feed the cable into the last piece of housing. And pop that there. Put the cable into the barrel adjuster. There we are. Cable is routed. I'm going to check the shifter, make sure I am downshifted all the way, and then the tension things. So, how are we doing that here? Well, what do we got? What do we got with tools? Toys. Well, what we're going to do is down here, going to make sure the barrel adjuster is dialed all the way in. Now the rear derailleur also is set up with a number of screws here. What we have what's called a B screw here. Make sure we're seeing this all correctly. Yep. So, we have this screw right here, which is the B screw, and this actually runs through the derailleur and actually hits the drop out of the frame, where there's a little notch, and that basically controls the angle at which the derailleur sits away from the bike. Either it kicks it back up farther like this, or closer into the frame. Then we have a high and a low screw. These determine how far the derailleur comes this way on the bike and how far it goes that way on the bike. And this derailleur has already been set up because it's been on this bike for years, so we assume that everything is good there. We're just going to go with the setup there. If you're trying to set up your high and low screws the first time, basically you have the cassette on, you want to have the cassette on the bike, on the wheel, and you want to have no chain. And that way you're just going to pull the derailleur over and push the derailleur over to the high and the low point, and adjust those screws with a Phillips screwdriver until you have the pulleys of the derailleur, or the top pulley at least, directly lined up with the cog teeth. Like I said, that's already been done here. So basically all we're doing is we're taking the one little set screw that we have here, and we are going to use that to tension the cable in place. And now I don't have much cable to work with in this case because this is a very large bike, and so proportionately there's for a standard size derailleur cable, that's usually a 2-meter cable. I'm not allowed of length. I could buy special cables, but I didn't. So that's what we're stuck with. Now, one last tool I'm going to use here. I'm going to use a pair of surgical clamps, which I think are really nice. They lock, get a hold of things. They don't have to be super tight. All I'm trying to do is just make sure that I get the cable and I can pull it relatively taut in there. What I'm doing is I'm putting my thumb here on what's called the B knuckle. This is the reverse parallelogram of the derailleur, and I'm just pushing a tiny little bit. I don't want to push the derailleur in towards the cassette because that will shift the gear position. I just want a little bit of tension on it. And then I'm going to tighten it up. already. There we go. As I do this also, you notice I'm grabbing the whole derailleur and preventing it from pushing out and trying to be into like a shifting position, because I want to get as much leverage on that as possible. And then we have the cable hanging out. Now, okay, that's set up. That's tight. There should be a fair amount of tension here. Here on the bike. We're all good. Now, I had already downshifted to the lowest gear. So basically all we're going to do now is we're going to check gears. Do that. And we're going to go all the way up. Okay, we're in the highest gear. And we're looking, like I said, if we kind of draw a line down through the chain, this pulley here is directly below the cog. So, shifting nice and smooth. No problems. No overshifting. Now we're just going to drop down, try it one at a time. Don't be surprised if it doesn't shift perfectly through every single cog the first time. So we're all the way back down. Now I'm going to shift up one, and we notice it doesn't shift, okay? That means there's not enough tension on the cable. So we do that, and turn the barrel adjuster counterclockwise. I'm going to go a full revolution, all the way back down to the lowest gear. I'm going to try again, all the way back down. I'm going to try half turn this time. I'm going to shift up. Still not enough. Another half turn, all the way down. Shift up one, and we got it. And shift back down. Okay, it's not catching one click, so we're just going to go one little more turn. There we are. Come back down. This is we're obviously getting some of that. Slack out of the cable. It really doesn't seem to like that first gear. There's one. I think we've got enough tension on that now. So now we're going to go up. Second gear from the bottom, or third gear from the bottom. Drop down one, jump back up, drop down one, jump back up. And basically we just want to keep on going. One gear increments, jump up. Jump up, make sure we can go back down, back and forth a couple times. Make sure each 2-gear jump we're making is okay. That's the highest gear we've got. And then one, another one, another one, another one, another one, another one, another one, and all the way down. Okay, relatively good. I'm not going to worry about any more fine tuning out this just yet, because we want to set up the front derailleur first. And then once we have that, we'll go over and make sure all the gear combinations work together. But that's basically your setup, aside from one last thing, which is you can kind of see maybe the end of the cable here, a little bit frayed. It's simply nothing more than a woven cable. And these tiny, wonderful little caps here. They're really cheap. Normally they come in like bags of 100, or when you buy a cable set, you'll have all that you need. And we're just gonna pass that over the end, making sure we have all the threads of the cable caught up. If we do that, we're just gonna grab it a little bit and twist it, make sure the threads are all holding together. And pass that end onto it. And then on our cable cutters, you see we have the cutting portion, but we also have little nubs here at the end where we can put that piece in, clamp it down, essentially crushing it in place so it's not going to move. We'll have to figure out how to do this exactly. Not much cable there. Alright, there we go. It's on, and we are done.